So this is class 190 on the Golden Doves. We're getting closer to the end of part 4, Textuality and Rabbinic Tradition. We're page 111, and in the last class we were discussing two different approaches to the study of Agadah, of all things, right? So, and the two approaches were, well, let's read. Why are these two extreme positions? I'm going backwards one paragraph. Recommendation of study from written copies or total condemnation, associated only with the study of Haggadah and not with Halacha. Right, so you remember the previous class, we said that according to the Yehoshua ben Levi, if you write down the Haggadah, you have no chelek le'olam haba, right? That was a pretty extreme position. And then you have the position of I believe it was Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish, who said that when you study Haggadah, you should study it from a book, meaning obviously you have to write it. Somebody has to write it down. So that would contradict Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who says that if you write it down, so what is that about? And why do you only have that machloket in regards to Haggadah? You don't have the machloket in regards to Halacha. No investigation of the place of the oral law in rabbinic tradition, which of course is what we're doing here in this book. The place of the oral law, Torah Shebe'al Peh, and the thinking of the Chachamim, could hope to arrive at a satisfactory solution without coming to grips with this problem. So now we're going to analyze this problem. The tension between written and oral. So you have Torah, you have Katuv and you have Be'al Peh, is intrinsic to, and thus co-equal with Rabbi Akiva's ideology of the formulation of the oral law. So Rabbi Akiva had the idea we have to formulate the oral law, seeing that the Romans were going to destroy Jewish nationhood, and with the destruction of Jewish nationhood, also the destruction of the Jewish judiciary, the Sanhedrin, and therefore we have to have some authority for the oral law. So in order to have authority for the oral law, and if you want to formulate the oral law, which is what Rabbi Akiva wanted to do, then we need to define what is the oral law, right? This ideology became official with the formulation of the Mishnah. So eventually Rabbi Akiva, he begins the movement of the formulation of the Mishnayot, which ends several generations past him. Prior to the formulation of the Mishnah, scripture and oral tradition were distinguished by the fact that only the former had a formulated text. Now, okay, so before this project of Rabbi Akiva, you had the Torah Shebichtav, right? And you had the Torah Shebe'al Peh. And how do you distinguish between Torah Shebichtav and Torah Shebe'al Peh? It's a matter of fact that only the former, meaning the Torah Shebichtav, had a formulated oral text, right? Had a formulated text. Meaning what makes it Torah Shebichtav is that there was a formulated text. Here are the letters have to be written thus and thus. The Gaonic and Sephardic traditions designated the oral law in its pristine form the Perush, exposition of the written law. Okay, and then we also had, so we had the Torah Shebichtav, which was this formulated text, and you had the Torah Shebe'al Peh, which was the Perush of the formulation of the formulated text. Without attempting to present a full analysis of this concept, let me look at footnote 31. I'm sorry. Okay, No, I'm looking at the wrong place. Hold on one second. Footnote 31. All right. Continuing in the main text. Without attempting to present a full analysis of this concept, it will suffice to point out that the most significant aspect of Perush is that it has no text. Okay, so the concept of Perush. So originally Torah Shebe'al Peh was Perush. It was the Torah of the Perush of the Torah Shebichtav, right? So we're not going to have a full formulation of the idea of Perush, right? But let's look at it nevertheless. And for our purposes, a Perush doesn't have a formulated text, right? So the Torah Shebechtav is that which has a formulated text. The Perush is not a formulated text. Pre Rabbi Akiva, right? It lacks textuological dimensions, of course, because there is no text. And formal articulation. There is no articulation. Every teacher would teach the Torah Shebe'al Peh, or the Perush, as he saw fit to teach the Torah Shebe'al Peh. Because it deals with the sense of the text, the Perush itself cannot have a text. Right, that's interesting. The Perush cannot have a text because now somebody is explaining to their Talmid or to their Talmidim, to his Talmid or Talmidim. He's explaining to him the sense or the meaning of the formulated text. So we're reading the formulated text and then we want to understand it. And then the teacher is going to explain it. So it's going to be a dialogue, so to speak, where the teacher is explaining to the Talmidim what the meaning of the text is. And that's why there is no text. Because if there was a text, it wouldn't be communication first to second person. First to second person communication implies some sort of thought process in the mind of the speaker. Then the processing of the thought and the transformation of the thought into words. And then there's a certain fluidity to language, right? So that fluidity to language is expressed in the particular words that the teacher is going to use to teach the meaning of the text to the Talmid. So there cannot be a formulated Perush. As noted earlier, Arabic-speaking Jews designate with the term talqin the specific type of instruction that Perush imparts to a text. So the word talqin means, this is what the word means. This is let me perhaps elaborate just a little. How do I read this word? Bereshit. But there's no vowels. Maybe it's barashit. No, talqin. It's bereshit. The teacher is going to teach the student how to read the words, and there is no basis for the student to question why is it be and not ba. Talqin, right? So similarly, ukshaltam leot al yadecha. I think an ot means an actual letter. No, talqin, it's tefillin, right? So you need to have talqin, right? Meaning, at a certain stage in the intellectual development, the initial stage of the intellectual development, everything is going to be talqin. Eventually, once the Talmid becomes a little more intelligent, then maybe he will have his own thoughts. But the foundation is the talqin, meaning the Torah Shebe'al Peh becomes the background for the Torah Shebechtav. It becomes a context for the Torah Shebechtav, meaning without this context and without this background, there could be no Torah Shebechtav. So you need talqin. Talqin establishes what the background and context is. Once you have that background and context within the perimeters of that background context, then you can have certain maybe innovative thoughts and new thoughts, right? But you need the talqin to establish the background of the context. All right. For example, suppose one wishes to explain a map to another. Okay, so you have this map. How does the map work? Now, just so you understand, the map is a two-dimensional rendering of the map is a two-dimensional square or rectangular rendering, depending on the shape of the map, of a three-dimensional sphere, right? I think that's the right term. It's not a circle, because a circle is two-dimensional. But the Earth is actually, it's a sphere. So it's not really accurate, the map. Meaning the way the map, the proportions of the continents on the map, the relative sizes, is not accurate. It doesn't represent actual reality. The actual reality is quite different than as it appears in the map. But you still need to know how to read the map, correct? So I want to explain to you how the map works. He cannot do this by drawing another map. Now, how can I explain to you the map? Okay, so I'm going to draw another map, explaining the first map. That's preposterous, but I don't understand the concept of map, right? So it has to be oral instruction where I'm showing you, okay, this is the continent of North America. Here you have South America. In between you have the Panama Canal, right? The Isthmus of Panama and the Panama Canal, right? So you need somebody to explain it to you. Now that's going to be through dialogue and communication, right? So a second map could expand or correct the first map but not explain it. Well, maybe once I study the map very well and I understand it, maybe I can make a better map, fair enough. But the map doesn't explain a map. The same applies to a musical composition. I want to understand, so beautiful, my sons play the piano beautifully. I want to understand what is the meaning of these beautiful musical compositions. So somebody say, oh, I'll explain it to you. Now he plays a melody. He plays a melody to explain a melody. Well, no, anything but a melody can explain a melody, right? A painting, what does a painting mean? I'll paint the painting to explain the painting. A chemical formula. Again, I need to transform the painting or the chemical formula into language that is communicable to the person to whom I'm explaining the painting or chemical formula. The explanation of one semiological system must be made in terms of another semiological system, right? You understand that point now. And of course, the other semiological system, which will explain the first semiological system, is a semiological system shared by this explainer and the explainee, or the teacher and the student. So both the student and the teacher, they speak, they have language, and therefore they use that semiological system, the teacher, to explain to the student the meaning of the other semiological system. In this case, Torah Shebichtav, or the painting, or the musical composition. This basic principle was examined by Emil Benveniste. Benveniste, let me just see, footnote, see Megillah, 7a, the opinions of Rabbi Yosef and Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, who prove that the scroll, I think I'm in the wrong footnote section, I'm sorry. Excuse me, just give me a moment here to catch my bearings. Okay, that was the wrong footnote. Going back. All right. Yeah. Sefer HaMaftech, introduction, some general. Arabic-speaking Jews render pirush or perush as tafsir. So tafsir, so you have the tafsir of Saadia Gaon, for example. So what does tafsir mean? Which may be best translated by its Spanish equivalent, exposición, exposition, or declaración, declaration, right? Okay. So that was Benveniste, yes, okay, problems of general linguistics. In this type of relationship, one system is the interpreter system, and the other is the interpreted system, right? So I have the beautiful painting, that's the interpreted system, and I want to explain now to an art student of mine, what is the meaning of this painting? What's happening here, right? What is it about? I'm going to use language. So right, that's the interpreter system, because we both share the interpreter system, and therefore I can use it to explain the interpreted system. The semiotic relationship between systems, the interpreted system is contained and finds ultimate meaning in the system of the interpreter. Right, exactly. Because again, I look at the painting, I don't have a clue what this is about. Somebody comes and explains it to me, and now through the interpreter system, which is words, language, you have an expression, and there's meaning to the painting. You see that? The semiotic relationship between systems is designated as a relationship between a system which interprets and a system which is interpreted. Wow, that's really just fascinating. Amazing. So now you have the Torah Shebe'al Peh, the Torah Shebichtav. You see how profound this is. Pre Rabbi Akiva for the Torah Shebe'al Peh, for the Pirush, to serve as an interpreter system of the Torah Shebichtav, which is the interpreted system, there has to be a common language, right? The common language is just speech. So it can't be reduced to a formulation. Because once you reduce it to formulation, it's similar to the text of the Torah Shebichtav at that point. And you need a system to interpret the new formulation. You see why the Chachamim were very opposed to transforming the Torah Shebe'al Peh from a non-textual exposition, pirush, which assumes that the student and Talmid have a common semiological system, language, and that language becomes the interpreter system of the Torah Shebichtav, which is the interpreted system. So they were very opposed to saying, no, now we're going to have another textual formulation to explain the first textual formulation. That would be like having a musical composition that explains this first musical composition. That doesn't work, right? But nevertheless, getting back to Emil Benveniste, this type of relationship between interpreter and interpreted system is classified as the relation of interpretation. For instance, so you have the relation of interpretation. It's very nice. A term of Benveniste, I believe. Yes, it's in quotes. For instance, the Morse and Braille systems are interpreted in terms of the alphabet. So you have the Morse code, or you have the Braille, and that's, as we're saying, Morse code, Braille. You have the woodpecker making this code, I guess, which I'm assuming is probably understood by other woodpeckers. I don't have a clue what that's about. It's the Morse code of the woodpecker. I recently gave a video on Instagram where I said that I believe I was talking about the Biden administration has the moral authority of a squirrel, of a confused squirrel. And as I said it, the squirrel ran across the telephone wire in back of me. It was kind of funny. You can't plan these things, just so you know. Okay. All right. So you're going to interpret the Morse code or Braille code. That's the interpreted system, and you're going to interpret it in terms of the interpretor system, which is language or alphabet, letters. Unlike algebraic equations, this type of relationship cannot be reversed. In algebra, you can say x squared minus 10 equals, I don't know, whatever the formula is. You have two sides to the equation. That's interesting how in mathematics you can interpret things in terms of each other. Applying this to our illustration, it means that the alphabet cannot be interpreted in terms of either the Morse or the Braille system. So I can't now interpret words. What does this word mean? Jack and Jill ran up the hill. So I say, I'm going to give you the Morse code to interpret what Jack and Jill went up the hill means. No, it goes one way. It doesn't go the other way. You can't switch the interpreter and the interpreted system. The uniqueness of language as a semiological system stems from two closely related facts. Language alone can be interpreted in terms of itself. Oh, wow. So here you have a system, a semiological system, language, where you can interpret, where you can interpret language in terms of language. And it is the ultimate system in terms of which all other systems are interpreted. It's fascinating. And now I think this is a quote from Benveniste. And we'll end with this quote. The third relationship between semiotic systems we will designate relation of interpretation. Now we said the relation of interpretation, so the Morse code can be interpreted in terms of the alphabet. The alphabet cannot be interpreted in terms of the Morse code. In this way, we designate what is instituted between a system that interprets and a system that is interpreted. From the perspective of language, from the point of view of language, the fundamental relationship is one which separates the systems into systems which articulate themselves. That's fascinating. Because they manifest their own semiotics and into systems which are articulated and whose semiotics appear only through the network of another system. So the meaning of words in language is manifested. Hold on one second, I'm getting a call.